Welcome to Heart Speak Podcast, episode 34, Immunity for Body and Soul. I've been very aware recently of how many people I've met who have problems with their immune system. Maybe it's an overactivity. Maybe they have recurrent sinus problems or eczema. Maybe they find that certain foods really upset them. In other cases, it's been that they have an autoimmune illness, such as rheumatoid arthritis, diabetes, MS. More and more illnesses are being seen as having an autoimmune aspect. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I've also been meeting people who get recurrent colds or people who have developed cancer. And I realize there's a lot of information out there about what we can do physically, but less about what we can do emotionally or spiritually. For instance, most of us know that vitamin C is a great antioxidant. It is wonderful to have good doses of vitamin C in your body, preferably from natural foods, from fruits and vegetables. Vitamin B, wonderful for stress. Vitamin A and D and E, really good for keeping our system safe and protected and being able to restore those parts of our body that get damaged. Maybe you know about zinc. Zinc is a wonderful healer, as is echinacea. And then others of you will just rely on large cloves of garlic in your food. Some of you know that exercise helps our immune system, as does fresh air, sunlight, and enjoying life. But I want to go a little deeper into that. I want to help you to understand what is the immune system and how can we help it to function in the very best way, not just so we avoid getting colds, but that we feel that our whole soul is being nurtured by what's happening in our world around us. So what do I mean by this? When I was a medical student back in the 70s, I could have shown you a book on immunity, which was about that thick. It was very small. There was so little we knew about immunity. Did we know much about T cells, the thymic gland, the B cells? Sometimes we used to say, oh, you don't need a thymic gland. You just take it out. It's more of a bother than it's worth. Well, it wasn't until the disease AIDS came along that we started to understand, my goodness, the thymus has a large part to play, not just in childhood, that's what we used to say, but ongoing. That all of our immune system is communicating with other parts of itself. And I can remember, shows my age, the very first memory of a consultant that I was working under talking about AIDS. Now, some of you might say, well, because you're much younger than I am, well, we've always known about AIDS. Well, we didn't. And this was, my consultant was a rheumatologist. She looked after people who had some physical disablement and needed different props to help them move around the house or to manage in the kitchen. So here we are back in 1981, and she's telling me that she'd gone to a dinner party and a guest had asked her, so what do you think about AIDS? And she had immediately thought that this guest was asking her about rheumatological AIDS. What can help a person in their house? So she said, I had just talked about, oh, there's this, there's that, there's this. And then suddenly it dawned on her, oh my goodness, this person's talking about the disease, not about the different props they can use in their house. And then I also remember in 1982 meeting someone who had typical markings of AIDS, what we call Kaposi sarcomas, these the redness markings on the skin. And he had just been told, oh, this is just a type of maybe skin cancer, but we don't think it's anything serious. We've got some medicine for it. We had no idea of the infectious nature of someone with AIDS. And even now we are looking for ways in which to understand this more deeply. And so I want to talk about not AIDS, but what do we now know about the immune system? One of the factors of AIDS, and indeed of influenza or flu, is that it is a virus. They are viruses that can change themselves so that they are never the same. So the concept of creating a vaccine has been extremely difficult, as in almost impossible, because the flu that you were developing last year is not the flu that's in the system this year. And so many times vaccines are based on old flus, and I'm not telling you not to have your vaccinations, but they are not as effective because they truly are against something that's probably not in the circulation at this time. That being another point. But what we understood is that the immune system is very clever, but sometimes the viruses are even cleverer. And I see viruses as a change in consciousness of humanity. I don't want to necessarily take us down that path, but I want to just say as viruses are a different facet of consciousness, whereas a bacteria is more like a little animal. It is different. It is more like a small part of us. So when a virus comes into our consciousness, we need to understand that something is changing within the world, and we are being changed by that. So from my thinking, we are also being offered the chance to learn not only from an individual to grow my own consciousness, but maybe we're trying to grow from whatever the message is of that virus within our system. In AIDS, there's definitely a message about feeling lovable, feeling part of something. So many times AIDS strikes people who feel isolated, separate, not able to connect with others. And of course, we can think of different communities that this has happened in. Now, please do not get the idea that I'm just saying any illness is only psychological. As you know from my previous podcasts, we need to include the psychospiritual concepts or complexities of illness, not exclude them. So it's a total package. We need physical awareness, we need emotional, we need spiritual awareness. They all need to be included. But if we return to the immune system, what we're looking at is what can affect us emotionally, mentally, that could maybe make our immune system vulnerable. And that vulnerability can lead to both an overactivity of our immune system or an underactivity or some other pattern. So it isn't just that we have a deficient immunity. Sometimes our immune system is on hyper alert, and that causes the problems as well, such as hypersensitivity to foods. Now, just before I go any further, too often do we say, oh, it's all due to stress. You know, we've got an easy answer. Illness is just due to stress. No, that's just too simplistic. And every time I hear it, I cringe, because what stresses you might not stress me. What might upset you definitely may not upset me. And therefore, what stresses me is more individual, more unique. And I want to say that unfortunately we use that word stress because we say, oh, I don't want to be stressed. But there's a level of stress which is actually healthy for us all. For instance, if you never open yourself up to new possibilities, you will never ever grow, and you actually will stagnate and possibly even die in that process. So what I'm saying is a little pressure from life to expand you is really good for the soul. But what really gets us is when we're strained, when we are taken outside the level of comfort, when we no longer feel we are in control, when we no longer feel we are coping. And this is true stress. Now, you may have heard of type A, type B personalities. Type A personalities are the ones who actually feel good when they have something to do, when they're up against it, when they're pushing a deadline, when they're being asked to do a lot. And so they may be caring for someone, or they may be stressed because they have a project at work. But you know, they feel great because this is what makes them alive. This is what makes them live. And someone who is a type A personality actually gets sick when they go on holiday, when they have a vacation, at a weekend, because that they cannot control. So what we often hear is someone say, oh, you can't believe it. They took care of that person all those months, but when that person no longer needed their care, they got sick. Or, wow, I went on holiday, you never guess, I spent all the time in bed because I was so sick. Type A personalities cannot deal with being out of control or not having a plan. And that's why when a type A personality does have a vacation, they often plan every day. They plan every piece of that holiday. That's what keeps them well. Now, a type B personality is different. They actually like to rest and relax. So they are more stressed when someone says, please, will you do this? That feels like, oh my goodness, I'm out of my comfort zone again, because now I'm being put in a place which is unknown to me. You see, both of them are unknown. Both of them feel out of control, but in a different way. There is a type C personality. It's been more related to Cancer personalities, the nice personality. So when a Cancer personality or a type C personality, they're okay as long as almost they're controlling the people that they're trying to please, that they're not put under pressure to express how they feel. A type C personality actually gets sick when they are not needed, when someone's trying to help them, or when they're being asked to really speak about what their needs are. That can be very stressful for a type C personality. I wonder if you recognize yourself in any of that. I wonder whether you say, oh, that's me, I need to be in control. And all of them, on some level, are needing that level of control. So back in the days of AIDS, or the beginning of AIDS, I was very involved because I was working with natural medicines, especially herbs and iridology and homeopathy, because nothing really else could help people who were developing AIDS. We had no drugs that we have today. So I saw a lot of AIDS clients and patients, and I attended lots of meetings because I wanted to really understand what was the difference between people who became HIV positive and people who developed the full-blown AIDS. Now, if you don't know the difference, HIV positive is really about the fact that your body has created antibodies against the AIDS virus. The full-blown AIDS is your body is no longer being able to cope with the influx of that virus. And on a side level, I wanted to say that's what really fascinated me a lot, was that even though we said this was a new virus, our body recognized it and could create an antibody against it. And it really made me understand that there is nothing new out there, that somehow everything that is being created is already known by our body, is already known by Mother Earth, and can respond to it. So that was a very positive thing, that we all may have antibodies to, for instance, the Epstein-Barr virus that causes glandular fever, but you may never have had the symptoms of glandular fever. It's just your body developed an antibody to cope with it, and you never needed to have the symptoms. So the fact that you have the antibodies shows just how strong your immune system is. So if I go back to the times of AIDS, what I learned, and there was a lovely description someone gave, which was that the immune system can be likened to the small intestine. And in the small intestine, we make the decision, or our body makes the decision, what foods to absorb, which will help us, and what foods to reject and allow them to pass into the large intestine and out of our body. In other words, our small intestine makes those decisions about what's good for us, what's not. It is a most amazing emotional boundary, healthy emotional boundary. And it's very interesting that in Eastern philosophy, in acupuncture philosophy, the small intestine is linked to the heart. So both the heart and the small intestine are part of our system that says, this is me, what is good for me, what is not good for me. And that ability to make healthy decisions for yourself, for the deep self, keeps your immune system healthy. All right, that's really important. Now, I hope you can understand what I'm really saying is, If you have no sense of self, then you will have a weakened immune system, or an immune system that won't know how to react properly. I'm going to come back to that. But a healthy sense of self is a healthy immune system. And a healthy sense of self is a celebration of yourself. You could call it a healthy respect for yourself, a healthy self-value, confidence, celebration of yourself, but also the ability to make choices that are good for you. And a choice, the ability to make choices, means you're not a victim to the world around you. And I want to I will come back to that. But being able to have good immune system means you are not a victim to the world, and you're not a victim of your choices, because you have a healthy respect for yourself. And because you have a healthy respect for yourself, you have a healthy respect for the world. Make sense? And that's what I'm wanting us to work with. So how do we have that healthy respect? We develop that through listening to our heart. We develop it by having a good immune sense of self through the solar plexus. And we have a healthy respect by knowing that we belong here on this planet, and we can root ourselves into the root chakra beneath our feet. The opposite occurs when my sense of self is not based on my inner me, but on your approval or your disapproval. So if I only know that I'm good enough because of what you say to me, that's solar plexus, or I'm overly sensitive to criticism, I will develop that huge solar plexus, which acts like a satellite dish, and I will spend more time reading your emotions, what you need, what the world needs, and believing that the world defines who I am. And when things come back to me that don't feel so good, I will then doubt myself. So if you're criticized enough, if you know you never hear any encouragement, you never hear good things, or if you have a belief system you don't deserve love, or that you're not good enough, or you have a belief system that you have to live up to other people's desires, or that you're a pleaser, you need to meet the needs of others to be loved, this is all solar plexus, then it's really hard to have a good sense of self. I see this in people who are Piscean, hello Pisceans out there, or who have a strong Piscean quality within their astrology chart. They merge with other people in order to know who they are. Maybe you recognize that in yourself. It's literally you surround people with your water in order to know who that you are in relationship to them. And that's why when someone dies, or you may lose a job, or you may lose a partnership, you're devastated, because who am I when I'm not in relationship to that person? And it's not uncommon then for us to see a cancer develop or an illness develop within the immune system, because I only know myself in relationship to others. How could I help that situation? It would be for me to say every month, especially if you're a woman, but if you're a man as well, please bring yourself back inside yourself just before your period, just before the dark moon. Allow yourself to say, who am I? What am I celebrating about myself this month? What do I know about myself that I didn't know about myself last month, and I'm loving that about me? What am I willing to own, even if other people don't like it? How can I make myself more whole, more loving of myself? Because this is what the immune system wants. A strong sense of self is a strong sense of connection and love of all that you are. Not separating parts of yourself off. It is truly, I bring into my heart those parts of myself, whatever they are, and I accept them as part of me. The more whole we become in ourselves, the more our sense of self, which is not affected by other people's approval or criticism, the stronger we are, the stronger our immune system. Make sense? So that's the solar plexus. Now I need to work with that base chakra. And it's not dissimilar, but the base chakra is more about, and I spoke about this last time, do I fit in? I don't care if you like me or not, or even love me, just do I fit in? Do I follow the rules? Do I know what I'm doing? And when I don't know the rules and I'm feeling out of control, then I will start to feel helpless. So helplessness, I believe, is less of a solar plexus issue, more of a base chakra issue, and sometimes more of a throat chakra. Do I have the information? I can feel helpless by not having enough information. So years ago, they took a group of medical students, and they take a group of medical students because they're supposed to be clever. And I'm laughing at my own self here. So they took equally intelligent people, and they divided them into two groups, quite randomly. And one group they put into this room, and they said, okay, there's going to be a loud noise. And the second group, they said, there's going to be a loud noise, but there's a button on the wall, and you can go over and turn that noise down at any time. So for 20 minutes, the group in room A had this loud noise, and they put their fingers in their ears, and oh dear, this is so awful. The group in room B, who had the same loud noise, felt quite content. They didn't get up to turn down the noise because they knew they could. Then individually, they took the people out of the room and they said, okay, we're going to interview you. And they put them into a room where there was a very bright light. Nearly all the people who had been in the room without the switch to turn down the noise didn't go up to the light and turn it down. The people who were in the room that did have the switch all went down and turned down the light. In other words, in 20 minutes, you made a group of equally intelligent people who had been separated only by the fact that one group had the ability to turn down the noise, one didn't, into one group. The first group became helpless to change anything. Second group knew they were in control of their scenario and their circumstances. And that is the power of the immune system. Create helplessness in people, and the immune response is affected. Often it becomes either overactive or underactive. In other words, I'm not saying one is better than another. It's just that it's not a healthy immune response anymore. So how do we make people helpless in our society? Well, one of the ways is to put people into hospitals. If you've ever been in a hospital, suddenly your identity is taken away, your clothes are taken away, your phone is taken away maybe, and you're put into a room where there's all these beepers and buzzers and things happening, and you feel helpless. You're no longer the secure person you thought you were. Then sometimes in a hospital, and I know this setting, you don't feel that you have control over the noise around you or the lights around you. Have you ever tried to sleep in a hospital? There's a lot going on. And maybe you're someone who loves sleeping with the window open, but there's no windows to open. Or maybe you're someone who likes to sleep in the darkness, but there's lights on. Very quickly are we placed in a place where the immune system actually is threatened by being out of control with our very natural circumstances. And that's supposed to be a place where we actually develop a healthier attitude towards ourselves. In other words, I could say hospitals are the least healthy places for the immune system. When we used to allow people to have plants in their rooms or flowers or pictures, people developed or got well much quicker. Now we say, oh, it's all very unhygienic, but actually familiarity actually makes us feel good about who we are. We also may not give people information, and that can happen anywhere. We say there's so much information out there, but often it is a case that people will be Googling something and sometimes pick up the wrong information or information that's not valid for them. When someone dies, when you're losing a job, sometimes you don't have the knowledge to know what to do next. Many a time we're feeling that if only I had some more information. But I don't think it's just information. Often we don't feel that we're being given the nurturing that we need. And that goes back to my comment that nurturing the soul is the best thing for our small intestines. So when we say we look at a relationship, or we look at a job, or we look at some activity, we're saying, does this situation nurture my soul? Does it make me feel peaceful? Does it make me feel content? Or do I feel out of control? Do I feel helpless? Do I feel fearful? And I watch many people trying to fix a situation as soon as it occurs for their fear of helplessness. If you've ever been around a loved one who's sick, maybe you're jumping in and saying, oh, I've got to fix the problem because I can't deal with your emotions. I can't deal with the helplessness that makes me feel. So am I saying don't fix their problems? What I would say to you is own your own helplessness. And many a time people don't want us to fix them. They don't want us to take on their emotions or their problems. They just want us to be witness. And we can do that. We can do that well. So down in the base chakra, it's how do we feel secure within our environment? And as I have mentioned several times in different podcasts, our base chakra is not a good place to try and feel secure. Sending your awareness down to your feet, feeling that you have a magnet at the soles of your feet. There's a larger magnet in Mother Earth and she's pulling you into her. Develop your roots into Mother Earth and feel Mother Earth, much bigger than you are, surround your roots with love and nurturing and security. So when you feel scared, send your roots into the earth. When you feel helpless, breathe out, breathe down, send your roots into the ground. And you will find you'll get a much better answer to what you need to do than when you're trying to work from your panic place in your throat, your base chakra, your head. And my last thing is lean back. Don't lean forward. Lean back into the arms of your soul because it has an answer for you. Now, I just want to finish with talking about emotions. Many times, emotions are blamed for everything. Emotions are not the problem to your immune system. Emotion, energy in motion. The energy of emotions is the energy to bring about change. It might be the tears to wash away the past, the anger to help us move, even the fear to actually energize us to make those changes, the joyfulness. And they did a survey many years ago, taking a group of actors, and the first group, whatever they did, however they acted in their audition, they said, "You're wonderful, go to Hollywood, fantastic." And on the way out, they took some blood from them, and they got the result they thought they would, which was a raise in their immune system. The second group, whatever they did, however good, they said, "Terrible, go away, don't ever try and give up your day job because you're not an actor." And these people were very upset, and they took blood from them again to see what happened to their immune response. And what was fascinating is that where they thought the first group would have a positive immune response because of the happiness, the second group had a positive immune response because of their sadness. And that was a huge study that showed if you express the right emotion at the right time, you get a positive buzz. So whatever you're feeling, express it correctly and your immune system supports you. The emotion is not the problem. It's the appropriateness of that emotion. And if you hide or suppress your emotions, that then has a negative effect on your immune response. So let me just clarify. We have people who are hypersensitive to the environment around them. Am I saying they're not allergic to those foods? No, they probably are. What I'm saying is it's being made excessively worse by a feeling of hypersensitivity to the world, not wanting to be on the planet, feeling out people are out to hurt them. If you can just come back into centering yourself and celebrating yourself, having good emotional boundaries, you'll find your sensitivity to the world around you will be lessened. Some of you are very psychic, very intuitive, and you might find that you can not take foods that are full of additives or lots of sugar, etc., etc. But you don't need to be scared of it. And you can find a balance where maybe you can even switch off some of your psychicness from moment to moment and not allow yourself to be so open to the world all the time. Then we have the people who are underactive in their activity. There again, it's back to how do I nurture myself to have a stronger sense of self. Here I am. That may be in the cancer. It may be in people who get recurrent infections. How do I get a stronger sense of self? And maybe, again, building better emotional boundaries between you and other people. What do I want? What nurtures me? And finally, our increasingly large group of people who have autoimmune illnesses. I mentioned some of them: lupus, rheumatoid, MS, diabetes, celiacs. The list goes on and on. There are so many illnesses now where we are seeing an antibody being created against the individual, against a part of them, an organ. So against your ability to make insulin, against your joints, against your small intestine. Why do we create antibodies against ourselves? There is this sense of self-hatred, a sense of self-destruction. Very hard to treat, and I have great honor for people who are suffering from these illnesses, but it is sometimes almost a sense of this is who you are. There's an identity that goes along with the illness. I am diabetic, I have MS, I have this. It's almost like it's the only way in which we can see ourselves. So to be able to peel ourselves away from the illness enough to see ourselves as a separate entity to the illness is very important. And all I would say is, loving yourself is not going around and saying, oh, I love myself, or even having massages, although those are wonderful. It's loving the self that is in you and seeing you in the loving way of saying, what are the most unlovable parts of myself, and can I love them? When we can love the most unlovable parts, we know we are whole. There is nothing in anybody that is unlovable. And we have to come home to ourselves to know that. Even loving ourselves that has the illness is fine. But there is a part of you that knows joy beyond the illness. It might just be for a few seconds, a few minutes. But one of the most powerful things for the immune system is a sense of joy, a sense of oneness with something bigger than you, a sense of where do you smile, a giggle in your heart, allowing yourself not to be pushed by the shoulds, musts, and ought, but just by the simple presence of being who you are. So, my dear friends, such a blessing talking with you. Listen to your heart. Love yourself as you are. Develop that strong and beautiful sense of self, because you are perfect just as you are. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Heart Speak podcast with Dr. Christine Page. Remember to check out other episodes in the podcast archive section on www.christinepage.com. And do share with friends, family, and colleagues. Join us next time for another edition of Heart Speak.